So we're going to cover outbound lead generation. I personally believe it's one of the most critical and underdone parts of the sales process. What I'm going to do is cover with you the fundamentals of outbound lead generation. I'm going to spend 15 minutes doing it, and then we can have question and answer after that. And sometimes it goes slightly over. So there's quite a few slides here, but I'll rattle through it. It's pretty intense. And we're going to record it so you can see the video. I've also written an article in it, and then you can get the PDF from this as well. Right, let's get cracking. Yeah? So outbound lead generation. Let me just pull this here. There we go. So at 1,000 Steps, you've got me here. You've got Graham introduced. Charlotte coordinates everything. She's the organizer. Ray runs the sales in the UK, and Simon's our international sales consultant. So we've got the team here as well, yeah, which is great. And we're sort of spread all over the world. We're everywhere from Barcelona to Australia to UK, Scotland and Singapore and Thailand as well. Sorry, I almost forgot Thailand. So what we're going to cover is, why do you need outbound lead generation? What is outbound lead generation? What are the parts of it? How should it flow? How do you build your model? You're right, and where do you go from here? Like marketing's view of the world. Marketing has this really interesting sort of set of tables that sits around the marketplace as such. Their principles are, the base principles are 30% are not interested in your company, never will be. 30% don't have a need just now, so therefore they're not going to buy from you. 30% have a need and are not ready to act, and 7% have a need and are ready to act but are not doing anything about it. And then you've got the 3% at the top who are actively looking, which is what everybody's really chasing after, is the 3%. We believe that outbound marketing allows you to tap into this sweet spot, which is the 37% in the middle. Those that have a need and aren't aware of it, and those that have a need and are ready to act, but just haven't taken that first step. And what I'm going to do is go through some base principles, some of them very simple, and some of them actually the answer to stepping into these large opportunities if you want to build them out. Marketing types, there's 4 base marketing types. Inbound marketing, and it basically that's a strategy that focuses around the publishing of content, building of your web page, and doing your SEO, drawing people into your world. So they will read your piece of content and then they'll reach out to you. And the next one is outbound marketing. Don't get mixed up with outbound marketing and outbound lead generation. They are not the same. Okay, they're completely separate. They have nothing in common apart from the word outbound. And outbound marketing is an interruptive campaigns where you're sending out email campaigns, your LinkedIn events, mail shot campaigns. The critical piece here is you're targeting groups of people who you know who they are, you know their roles usually, which industries they're in, but it's large groups of people to invite them to events. Account-based marketing is a separate thing. Account-based marketing is where you're targeting an account. It's the blending of marketing and sales where both parties have to work together. Account-based marketing does not work, and it will be something that we do a webinar around, without marketing and sales working together. And that's about building a plan that targets specific accounts. And then finally, outbound lead generation, I'm going to come to that in a second. Yeah? But ultimately, we should all have a blended model that uses all 4 of these methodologies as our go-to-market. If we don't have that, then you're not running a proper sales model, really, in my opinion. Yeah? So what's outbound lead generation? It's a method of reaching out to create prospects who have or have not heard about you. It doesn't really matter. The primary tool in this process is the salesperson. So it's about using the salesperson to interact with people, you're right, and individuals. It rotates around personalized communication, and it's things like networking, events, training, and partnerships, referrals, cold calling, and LinkedIn. Right? These are all one-on-one pieces, yeah, right, that encapsulate outbound lead generation as a concept. Yeah. Purpose of outbound lead generation is to get meetings. It's to get meetings with the right people. That's the goal. I know it's really simple, yeah, right, and really obvious. But in a business, you need introductory meetings with new businesses on a consistent and ongoing basis. Like Kaz was saying there, 2 new leads come in. That's what we want, right? We want quality leads coming into our business from all of the different areas. We shouldn't ever be relying on one area. Which industries, it's B2B, generally uses outbound lead generation. Professional services, software, engineering, higher value products, financial services. So, you know, like that these are the companies that should be using Outbound. Most of them are not. Very few people have the maturity to say, I have a strategy that sits around referrals. I mean, most have a partnership model, but which I usually find is not run very effectively. So Outbound lead generation methods, I'm going to break them down for you. You've got referrals, that's the obvious one. And I'm going to sort of give you sort of like a little bit of an overview on each of them. And then I'm going to give you a method. So you can see here, build lists of people to ask for referrals. We get referrals from people. You have to understand that. And we get referrals from people when they like you, they trust you, they like your product, and they trust your product. There's a difference between liking and trusting. You could like 1,000 steps, but you're not quite sure if it's going to deliver. But you could like it, right? There's a rationale that sits within that, yeah? When can you ask? Okay, you know, we got to think about that. You can't just ask for referrals randomly. It doesn't work like that. You cannot get referrals from just anyone, yeah? Okay? And then final part is, how do you ask? So this is the process of referrals. People get this wrong. They don't understand the complexity that sits around this. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run through a very simplistic method of asking for referrals in a very structured fashion. The building of referral models, or building of networking, or building of partner models, or building of whatever you want to build, it takes time to build it and get it right. So what I'm showing you now is not the answer. It just sort of gives you a little bit of a window into the sophistication that should be involved in building out your model. So the start point with getting referrals is asking for help, okay? Once I've asked for help, someone said, I'm happy to give you referrals, because at the end of the day, we've got people that will introduce us to other people. You need to meet them and have a physical meeting to discuss it. I look at their Zoom, yeah, right? I would draft a message that I'd like them to send beforehand. I then physically meet them. I'd pull names from LinkedIn and say, I wanted to ask Kaz for introductions. And he said, yeah, I'm really happy to pass you anybody, Fraser. I would pull a list of names of people that might benefit from what I do that he knows within LinkedIn. It's an easy start point, yeah? And then if Kaz was happy to do it and introduce me, I'd maybe get him to introduce me to 3 or 4 people. I mean, you know, 5 people, whatever. And then I would try and help him back. Who can I introduce him to? How can I help him? Maybe I'd buy him lunch or coffee, or, you know, and, you know, I'd maintain that relationship and cultivate that. So it's not you know, I'd keep him up to date if he did introduce me to someone. There's a whole process sits around it that's extraordinarily sophisticated. So that's why are referrals important. It's easier to get to discovery. I'm all about the discovery. We have to do discovery with clients. The deeper we understand our clients, the better. If you work with referrals, they will let you take them on a journey, you know, in an easier way than if you meet them randomly, right, through marketing, through inbound. They tend to control the conversation. A referral tends to be a collaborative. Trust comes quicker, friendlier discussions. It's easier to collaborate. The conversion ratios are much, much, much higher. I mean, it's this, you just have to do a little bit of research to see the ratios. The revenue is higher as well. The cycle of the client is long. There's a longer life cycle of keeping the client. And ultimately, it's less meetings to get to a client. So we like referrals, and I start with referrals specifically. Without a solid referral model in your business, you're missing a massive, massive chunk of revenue. Okay, networking. Again, networking, there is a place for it. For large corporate sales, for really high value products, it can work, cannot work. Referrals are usually the best way to do it. But networking for that range of products that networking fits is brilliant, right? You know, if you're selling services into engineering, right, you can go to events where engineering people, I mean, you know, there's so many reasons why networking works. And it's not just about networking is not about going to a networking event. It's about industry confidences, random networking launches, roundtables, lunches, networking groups. I particularly like training events. When you're all there and you're in training events, you'll find, right, you know, that you're all interacting and you build some really deep relationships that last for a long time if you cultivate them. And virtual, look, webinar, this is not a webinar, by the way, this is a meeting. So you'll notice the difference between a webinar and a meeting. A webinar really is one-dimensional. A meeting, you can send me a chat. You can, you know, you actually could, don't switch your microphones off because I'm recording, but you could switch your microphones off. We've got live stream, Q&A, panels, meetings like we're doing now, roundtables. All of these are great ways of meeting people and interacting with people if it's the right event with the right people there. So I like virtual events, yeah, right? And I really enjoy doing them, but I also like the live. 3 phases to networking events and optimizing them. Number 1, prep properly, the pre-event structure of how you plan for it, what you're doing, how you're doing it, who's going to be there, the guest list, who do you want to talk to, do you talk to the organizer, etc. During the event, how do you engage, how do you interact? If it's a webinar, online, virtual, you've got one way of doing it. If you're face-to-face, there's another way. I mean, nothing makes me chuckle more than seeing 3 representatives together at a conference and they're all sat together and not exchanging business cards, not interacting with anybody else. And then finally, I have to move out of the way, but post-event, what do? You go all the trouble of going to these events, and then 3 weeks later, you send everybody an email. It just doesn't make sense. You know, I'm on the day I'm connecting with everybody on LinkedIn, the data is going into CRM straight away. On Monday morning, I'm bouncing a message to everybody that's connected on LinkedIn. I'm bouncing an email to everybody as well. On Monday, first thing, if the event was on a Friday, if it's on a Tuesday, you're doing it on a Wednesday. That ramps up the effectiveness of everything that you do and the time invested in the event. That's the biggest problem with most businesses, is the business cards stay on people's desks, or the contacts from the webinar stay on a white piece of paper that sat on their desk there for about 3 weeks and they don't do anything with it. LinkedIn, again, it's an outbound lead generation tool because you can reach out and you can have one-on-one communication with people. And let's be frank about it. Look, where are you? You're not on LinkedIn. It's not often I find that, but I find a lot of people, in fact, the majority of people are there with a very, very poor profile. And LinkedIn's your face, right? You can't avoid it. If someone Googles Haley, they're going to find LinkedIn, right? That's what's going to come up. LinkedIn are at the top of search for that now. So, you know, and you're there and you've got an excellent profile. You're really well put together. It's working really, really nicely. So that's your start point with LinkedIn. The second piece is let's not get away from the fact that it's a social media platform now. It's not a recruitment tool. It's used as a recruitment tool, does a great job of that, but their primary objective is it's a social media platform. So you need to engage properly and understand how to engage. And it's massive, right? You know, Singapore is one of it's got the most people per percentage of the population in the world. At this point, it was 740 million. I think it's about 780, 790 million now, right? You know, the people you want to talk to are definitely here. So using it and making sure it's used properly, and again, I'm not going to go into it in a lot of detail with you just now, is critical. If your teams are not capable of getting leads from LinkedIn, if it's not working, then they're just doing it wrong, because it does work, right? You know, you can basically talk to virtually anybody now if you're skillful enough and you know what you're doing and you do it the right way and you follow the right model. Look, ultimately, people love it. It gets rid of cold calling, eliminates worry, losing contacts, location barriers, referrals, business intelligence. I mean, there's just so many benefits. I mean, it's mind-blowing, right? I mean, I couldn't imagine life without LinkedIn and LinkedIn Navigator. Okay, and finally, cold calling. The funny topic, because no one really likes cold calling. I mean, I personally don't do it, and I've never enjoyed doing it. I mean, I did it, but I didn't enjoy doing it. But cold calling is having a little bit of a reinvention at the moment, especially when it's low value software sales. Yeah, so $100 a month, $200 a month, $300 a month. You're selling that you know, directly into a marketplace. So cold calling actually works. So just a little bit of a refresher for those that did it, and for those that haven't, there's some really core principles here that sit around cold calling. Yeah, know your numbers. Yeah, right. You know, are you getting warm numbers? Are they hot? What's going on with your numbers? The quality of the data is really, really critical. You need to be well trained. You know what your differentiation is. Why is your product good? You need to be listening to calls. Yeah, right. Is it good or is it bad? How are the teams preparing to make the calls? Have they got a script? Yeah, right. You know, you need to know who you are, what are your weaknesses, strengths, how do you articulate yourself, and how do we convert a call into a conversation? That's the skill here. Yeah, right. Within cold calling is, I don't like it as a model, but it is something that does work in certain marketplaces, and is something that should be considered, but usually is done really, really, really badly. Yeah, and it's quite interesting. I've done a lot of work in this space with companies where the average is about 180 dials for one appointment. But if you do it right, it can be as low as 10 dials for one appointment, even less if the person's good, if the data is good, if the rationale for calling is good. Yeah. Okay. Partners, like 3 core areas to partnership model to look out for. Number 1, why do you want a channel? Why do you want to have partners? Why? What's the rationale? It doesn't, you really got to understand that. Why do they want to work with you? This gets overlooked so often when I'm working with clients. It's because they're like, yeah, I'm doing them a favor. I'm giving them access to my product. Stop. They're doing you a favor. They're working with you, right? I get it. You could look at it the other way. But for me, I look at partners as clients, right? How do I interact with them? How do I build the relationship? I'm getting a free sales force as such, right, with a partner. Why would I not do everything in my power to make their world work for them? They take the risk. That my job is to support them, help them, and give them what they need. And ultimately understand what are the benefits for them, not me. I'm secondary in this relationship. So as you build a partnership model, number 1, where do you find partners? How do you find them? How do you bring them in consistently? Onboarding them when you get them in, and then finally managing, nurturing, and engaging with your partners as you navigate down that road. So I'm giving you some really solid outbound lead gen models here, right? If we look at an outbound lead gen process, and again, I'm just conscious of time, yeah. You always, outbound lead generation starts with a database. It starts with the context of people. How do you find people that you can interact with? The second part is, how do I engage with them? How do I start a communication? Is it a cold call? Is it a referral? Is it a networking connection? Is it, is it a partner? Right? How do I, what does that look like? Then once I'm engaging, how do I nurture that content on an ongoing basis? Just because they don't want to meet me or they don't want to buy from me, or I want to nurture that forever. I want to keep them. I want to keep myself front of mind with them. I want to be interacting. Yeah. The phase 4. How do we get that deeper engagement? So at the end of the day, because you're reaching out, yes, with a referral, we can book a meeting straight away. But if we meet someone at a networking event, there's a layering there that we want to build that relationship up, so we're in a position to be able to say, let's have a meeting, yeah, right? Convert that into a prospect, update the CRM, and then book a meeting with them, yeah. And that's the flow. If you look at the flow here, that's the flow of the outbound contacts, database, communicate, develop the contact, deeper engagement, meaningful interaction, convert into a prospect in the system and technology that you've got, and then book a meeting. If we're not booking meetings, the whole thing's completely pointless. Waste of time. And we can book meetings with people and not sell to them. That's okay. If we book meetings, we meet them and they're the right person in the right business. We just have to maintain that relationship over time, stay front of mind. And that's the rationale of building out a solid sales process. So the process for building a model and looking at it as a whole, first of all, you need to do your segmentation, your target market piece. If you don't know your segmentation target market, you've got a problem. Goal planning, you need to know your numbers, your ratios, what your goal planning is, what you're trying to achieve. You have to have an assessment and build of your databases. So you've got to build your databases. If you don't have good databases and you're not managing it through CRM the right way, this will not work. And that's why most outbound lead generation campaigns don't work. Assess and agree which models you're going to use. Is it referrals? Is it cold calling? Is it networking? Different businesses, different things. Content creation needs to sit in line with this. We're running a webinar here. It's part of our outbound lead generation model. We invite people to the webinar so that they can interact with this. It's a piece of content that gets created by the marketing team. Technology, which platforms are you using? Do you use Navigator to facilitate? Do you use CRM? You need both of them, right? If you're that serious and you're doing this way, without the two of those platforms, you're going to find it difficult to manage and control what's going on. Implementation and training, again, it's not just an individual that wants to be good at outbound lead gen. We want the whole business to be functioning. Therefore, we need to implement the model and train people. I always think allocation of roles is something, again, that's overlooked. Marketing has to do their bit. Business development associates need to do their bit. Salespeople need to do their bit. Sales managers need their bit. Sales directors need their bit. Everyone's working together to facilitate a model. Allocation of time. Again, the number one reason it fails is people don't allocate the time to do the BD work, to do the outbound lead generation. And then finally, you've got to track your numbers. No numbers ain't going to work here, right? You've got to know your numbers. You've got to be managed, you've got to be coached, and you've got to be working on a consistent and ongoing basis. Okay, any questions? I was a little bit longer, but there was a lot more today. Yeah? So anybody got questions? Oh, quiet, huh?
We're all blown away, Fraser.
Pardon?
We're all blown away with what you've just gone through.
I wish.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thanks, David. I appreciate that.